being a stick in the mud. I said, hey, I'm sorry if I was a little edgy last night. She's like, yeah, you were. Seemed like you were in a bad mood. Yes, I'm holding all of this inside and watching the greatest country that human beings have ever created. I am watching it.
If you thought it was gone for the Obamacare being implemented.
No, Obamacare ain't nothing compared to this.
Well, I don't know about that, but this is really bad too. Obamacare is a giant, stark puzzle piece of communism.
Right.
This is kind of like the budget version of open borders. This is, we don't have a budget. There's no money. Money means nothing. There's no budget. The numbers mean nothing. We just have to they do, though. Even though this feels like money doesn't mean anything anymore, to everyday Americans who go out and work for money, it does mean something. So as the value of the money becomes either worthless or more powerful or less powerful, the people who have it are being affected by this directly.
This budget deal is larger than probably 95% of all the nations in the world.
Oh, definitely.
That of their budget.
Yeah.
Like add all their budgets together.
Yeah.
This is bigger than that.
Yeah. And the thing is when you throw money like this around, money becomes worthless. So people who have been saving, it becomes worthless. People who have been being irresponsible with their money and driving up their own debt with credit card purchases or loans, this becomes a help to them because they borrowed more valuable money that they will have to use less valuable money to pay back. And people who are being responsible and being frugal and saving money and putting money in savings, that money is now worthless.
I was thinking about something the other day. With all of this, if you could peel back the curtains of the government and you and I and the radio show, and we could go inside the government and we could look at the numbers and we could look at the money and we could look at what they really have been taken from us, and you see all the trillions. I mean, we're creeping up on $20 trillion of debt. All the trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. One thing comes to my mind. I think America was the greatest country ever in all of human history, exponentially more. More than you could possibly imagine. It was more. Because they're soaking all of us. They're soaking all of this capitalism. They're ripping all of this out, all at the same time. We're still running. Who are all these people getting all our money? All of it. And yet at the same time, we're still a country. We're not Greece.
It's amazing.
We're not Greece. We're not. This. Yeah, I don't.
The only thing I can think of is that there's still this false sense of freedom and this false sense of everything working well enough to where we have all these brilliant, innovative people. And we have the technology. We have technology. People are living their lives and judging the greatness of America through these gadgets that we're able to make or whatever. And a lot of it we're not even making. We're just subcontracting China to put together iPads and iPods and stuff like that. But we came up with the ideas for it. So in our minds, we're still cutting edge and all that kind of stuff. But like you said, Brian, absolutely right. Money's being created, and it's going to people that are arbitrarily being selected by Congress, the House Freedom Caucus.
Could you imagine if they allowed us to keep our money?
My God.
If they allowed us to do what we were doing before, founding father style, small federal government.
It'd be out of
Could
control.
you imagine the wealth that the poorest of the poor in this country would be wealthy?
Well, to today, even now, even with as bad as it is, the poorest people in America are extremely wealthy, not just compared to poor people in, like, let's say, Africa or whatever, but also compared to poor people to the 1700s in America.
Well, take the people that were poor back in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, even just not that very long ago.
What poor person do you not see that is not literally overweight, cell phone, cars?
The overweight thing's very interesting. It wasn't that long ago, maybe a generation or two. You go back to like the 40s, maybe,
where everybody was starving.
Well, people that lived in countries that were having problems with famine. One would be Germany right after World War II was over.
Oh yeah,
and you had the problems with Berlin, and you had the Cold War getting started up. People in Germany had a actual, real fear of possibly dying of starvation. In America during the Depression, that would have ended very quickly if it were not for the election of FDR, whose New Deal prolonged it for over a decade.
He had the New Deal, and then he had the New Deal, and they had the re-deal. He kept coming up with different deals.
Anything to
multiple deals.
Anything that progressed America towards communism was what he was after.
Right.
The point being, his communist agenda prolonged the Depression by probably a decade. That being said, there were people in America living under the communism of FDR who were actually worried, not where they were going to get their food the next day, but maybe within a month or 2 or 3 months, that they could actually be dead from starvation. It was an actual fear. There is nobody in America, probably nobody in Europe, who has any fear whatsoever that they may actually be dead within a year of starvation. It's not happening.
No, I don't see that.
Yeah, so that's the difference between poor today and poor back then. Poor people today are spoiled rotten.
Yeah!
They get mad. They get pissed if they can't have their satellite TV.
No, I agree 100%, without a doubt. There are people buying liquor at the store with their welfare card.
With government money.
Right, because you get cash to spend on stuff, and you get food stamps allotted to spend on food.
I think they're allowed to gamble with it. They go to the casino.
Yeah, you can grab cash out and spend it there.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, Nancy Pelosi said for every one person on unemployment, that actually helps raise the economy.
Oh, that's that perpetual motion machine we're talking about.
Right.
That's so
we're putting
ridiculous.
a patent in for that one.
Yeah.
So I've got a little thing that it was long, but I clipped out just the center clip of it that is really emotional to me. And here on Smith Radio, we have this great affection for Ronald Reagan and the policies and the steadfastness that he had to not putting up with this kind of BS, to not crossing the aisle and shaking hands and working. You can't, like I've said before, Jesus Christ could never meet the devil halfway. Where does Christ meet the devil on middle ground? Can't do it. It is clear in my mind. It is bad versus good, black versus white, evil versus good. That's exactly what we're looking at right now. And this is what they're doing. And they hate the fact that America was so good. They hate it. Can't stand it because they're not good. It's that whole projection thing that we're talking about. So they've got to steal that goodness away from us. Well, back in 1964, during the election of Barry Goldwater, Ronald Reagan gave a speech to the to the candidate to the crowd that was there to support Barry Goldwater, and his speech went on for about 20, 22, 23, 24 minutes, and it was all off the cuff and it was unscripted. It's pretty amazing. So I've got this clip from him because of how relevant it is today. Think about 1964, how long ago that was, and now today, 2016, and really listen to the words that he's saying and see if that resonates today.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening. Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. Not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down. Man's old age dream, the ultimate in individual freedom consistent with law and order, or down to the ant-heap of totalitarianism. And regardless of their sincerity, their humanitarian motives, those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. In this vote harvesting time, they use terms like the Great Society, or as we were told a few days ago by the President, we must accept a greater government activity in the affairs of the people. But they've been a little more explicit in the past, and among themselves, and all of the things I now will quote have appeared in print. These are not Republican accusations. For example, they have voices that say the Cold War will end through our acceptance of a not undemocratic socialism. Another voice says the profit motive has become outmoded. It must be replaced by the incentives of the welfare state. Or our traditional system of individual freedom is incapable of solving the complex problems of the 20th century. Senator Fulbright has said at Stanford University that the Constitution is outmoded. He referred to the President as our moral teacher and our leader, and he says he is hobbled in his task by the restrictions of power imposed on him by this antiquated document. He must be freed so that he can do for us what he knows is best. And Senator Clark of Pennsylvania, another articulate spokesman, defines liberalism as meeting the material needs of the masses through the full power of centralized government. Well, I, for one, resent it when a representative of the people refers to you and me, the free men and women of this country, as the masses. This is a term we haven't applied to ourselves in America. But beyond that, the full power of centralized government, this was the very thing the Founding Fathers sought to minimize. They knew that governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they know when a government sets out to do that, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose. They also knew, those Founding Fathers, that outside of its legitimate functions, government does nothing as well or as economically as the private sector of the economy.
So there you go. And it's funny because it sounded like he was making a speech in opposition of all the stuff Obama's been doing.
Right. And like that first part of the story was saying, two of his friends were talking to a Cuban refugee, and the refugee was telling him all these things, and the two friends were like, "Man, we didn't realize how good we have it in America." And the refugee said, I had a place to go to. I had somewhere to run away from. We're here in America. Where are you going to run to? Where are you going to go now? This is the last beacon on earth. There is no question about it. She falls, we all fall. There's no question about it. There is nobody out there espousing these ideas and that are there for us to where the government's small, the government serves the people.
Well, individual freedom. I like the way he said it's not about right and left. It's about up or down. And that is absolutely true. We've been talking about that from day one. Up being the freedom of man, down being centralized government ruling over us.
That sums up what Smith Radio is all about, hands down. All right, folks, listen to us. Stay optimistic. We will win sooner or later.
Hopefully.
Good night now.
with unfathomable power.
What kind of power?
Unfathomable. It's without fathom.